Welcome to the Panic Room, where we talk about all things panic-inducing. I am the Queen of Panic. Warning, some episodes may contain content that may be disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let the games begin.
This literally just happened to me this morning. I was sleeping in my bed next to my wife and son. My son is just over a year old and still wakes up throughout the night. So, my wife and I have lullabies playing on YouTube on our TV all night to help soothe him when he wakes up. As normal, he wakes up and starts fussing, and my wife pulls him in to breastfeed. She taps me and tells me she has to use the bathroom. So she gets up and does her thing. Keep in mind, I'm not drowsy or sleepy or anything at this point. I've been awake for at least 45 minutes, even prior to my son waking up. Anyways, as she is in the bathroom, I'm laying there, my son on the other side of the bed, now back asleep. Then, suddenly, I feel paralyzed. I feel as if my body weighs 500 pounds. The sound of the lullaby disappears and is replaced with what I can only describe as rushing winds. As if I'm being shot through a tunnel or vortex or something. My eyes are wide open. I'm fully conscious. I feel a heavy presence in my room. I hear whispers, but I can't understand anything they're saying. And it's so loud. The wind or water rushing or whatever the fuck it was. I was frantically trying to turn over or move, but it felt like I was being held down. I felt a pain in my lower back, but I couldn't scream or talk or yell or whisper. Then I fucking saw it, right there, in front of my bedroom door, a silhouette, but not a dark one, as if it was invisible, or trying to be invisible, but somehow the light from the TV reflected off of it. 7 foot tall, slender, almost oval-shaped head, standing there, staring. All of this felt like it lasted hours. Then, just as I caught the glimpse of it, my wife opened the bathroom door, and I was free, and it was gone. I haven't told my wife yet. She's very religious, and honestly, I just don't want her to freak out. But it happened. Disclaimer: this is not a made-up story. This literally just happened to me. I've had sleep paralysis before, and this was nothing like it. I was wide awake. I feel weird telling this story, but I'm hoping just putting my thoughts into words on a screen can help me better understand what just happened. Was it an alien? I don't know. Could it just be a freak incident? Sure. Whatever it was, I've never experienced anything like it. Any input is appreciated. Thanks.
This was an experience that happened to me when I was a kid, probably 8 to 10. I'm 22 now for reference. There used to be this park in the summers my dad would take me to. He would play basketball in the section where the courts were, and I would play in the section with the park equipment. One day, I was on a swing set, and this couple came up and started talking to me. There was a man and a woman with a black stroller. I don't think I ever saw a baby in the stroller. I remember it always being faced away from me. This may have been a normal interaction, and eventually interactions, but something felt very off, or like dreamlike about the encounter. I was able to even pick up on it at that age. The man in the couple was wearing blue jeans and a red and white plaid checkered shirt, but he looked odd, like kind of clammy or pale or gray. I also remember his eyes being very penetrating. The woman had on a dress, and I think had medium-length brown hair. I can't remember her face, no matter how hard I try, though she looked more normal from what I can remember. The best way to describe the man's hair would be kind of blonde, ashen, and artificial looking. Kinda sticky up, lots of flyaways, and in a sort of bowl cut style, I think. And I can't remember exactly what we were talking about, but I think it revolved around God or religion, and it was a fairly short interaction. Probably about 10 minutes. The weirder part is that I saw them later at a completely different park at a different date. Could have been weeks or months. And they were in the exact same outfits, with the exact same stroller. It looked like only 5 minutes had passed, but it was a completely different location at a different time. I can remember feeling apprehensive and off when I saw them again. Strangely, I can't remember if I talked to them or not a second time. And the last key to the story. When I told my dad about seeing this couple multiple times as a kid, he said that maybe they were angels. I remember that intensely freaking me out for some reason. Now, there could be a perfectly rational explanation for this, but more recently I've been doing more spiritual work and growth, as well as scientific, astrophysical, biological, quantum physics theory, etc. research, and this memory resurfacing prompted me to share it. It's not the first time I recall this happening, but it is the first time I feel like I could maybe get some explanation. Aliens, interdimensional beings, otherwise? I'd be happy to provide any more context about my life if it's helpful, or the encounters if I can remember. This happened in the states of Maryland during the daytime. Thanks.
A few months ago, I saw something I cannot explain. I've been trying to put this on Reddit, but it keeps getting banned for some reason, which almost makes me think I'm onto something. I created a Reddit account just so I could tell this story without being looked at like I'm out of my mind. It was a Saturday in October, about noon. I was with some of my friends and colleagues at a theme park called Kings Island. It was a wonderful place, very high quality, actually has been upvoted as America's favorite theme park on more than one occasion. But while me and my friends were having fun, feeling like kids again, something, without us knowing, was watching and listening. I was the first one to feel it. I thought I was insane at first, but I'm not sure anymore. I just felt very uneasy, and I was getting that someone or something is watching me feeling a lot. I also saw something at the corner of my eye 3 times, but whenever I looked, it would vanish. After the 3rd time, I noticed Lizzie, my friend, and John, my boyfriend, having similar uneasy expressions, looking to the side a lot as well. I whispered in John's ear, "Do you keep seeing that too?"
Yeah.
He replied. I then whispered in Lizzie's ear. She said the same. We were having fun and didn't want to spoil the fun, so we just decided it must have been a kid hiding behind a tree, waiting to jump out and say boo to a friend. Still, we couldn't wipe away how uneasy we felt. Now, I read stories on Reddit without an account about paranormal or weird crap happening to people. I always see variations of the quote, "chill down my spine," and I've never really experienced that. Something about a kid felt wrong. I felt that chilling feel over and over again. We decided to head over to Orion when I heard something that scared me so much I thought my eyeballs were going to fall out of my skull. And I gagged on my own tongue. Snap! I swear something was behind us and stepped on something that broke. We all looked behind us, and lying behind us was a light-up sword that was snapped in half. John tried to reassure me and Lizzie by saying,
"This is a popular park. A visitor stepped on it."
But that was just the problem. This park is normally full of people. In fact, second ago, it was. I never cuss, but my God, it was too fucking quiet. The only sound we heard was the wind, rocking the swings on the swing ride back and forth, making the overused metal squeak. We just kept moving, thinking nothing of it. But my God, who could have broke that toy? Nobody was there. And the path is a straight shot. There was no way someone could have broken it without us seeing. We got in line for Orion, and although the line was the one that is usually long, it was very short this time. John, being the bro that he is, kept trying to keep our minds off the whole thing.
"We got lucky with our timing, huh?"
He said. I wanted to get my mind off it too, so I let out a pathetic little giggle. We got on the ride. Second row from front. The rest of our friends filled 4 other rows. The announcer turned on their microphone and said, "Here you go, up and away on Orion. Enjoy your ride and the rest of your day at Kings Island." And the ride began. We were at the very top of the hill when John violently shook me and pointed at the woods, where we saw trees moving in a path, like something was jumping from tree to tree. It was actually terrifying. We went down the hill, and as we were going hundreds of miles per hour, I swear I could make out a small inhuman face looking at us as we rode the coaster. When we got off, we heard something that sounded like a human scream. But it wasn't a human scream. It sounded almost human. But it sounded more like it could be an animal. About 4 hours later, the sun was going down. My friends Amy and Kyle offered to buy us some of the famous Kings Island ice cream. It was an offer we couldn't refuse. And after a few more rides, it was time for the fireworks show before the closing. So you can get an idea where we were. We were just coming off of Diamondback, when the rest of our friends wanted to ride Mystic Timbers before it closes, because of the lack of the line. John and Izzy felt bad leaving me alone after we got spooked, and we still couldn't wipe that something's watching vibe. Once again, when we were nearby Action Zone, it got too quiet again, and we saw something we will never forget. It was crawling on all 4s. It had eyes that glowed yellow. Its skin was green, and it had scales all over its body. It started standing up on its legs, and it was huge. It was tall, at least 7'5", and the thing spoke. The thing screeched and said something under its breath. None of us could make out any of the words other than
arm, run,
and
feed.
it ran into the woods after that. We didn't get any sleep, and since then, we haven't told anyone about it. It was today when I saw a number of people claiming to see a yellowed-eyed creature all throughout Mason and Cincinnati, Ohio, that I knew it was time to make a Reddit account and share the story. If anyone has seen this creature, do tell. Thank you for hearing me out. If you know what this thing is, tell me. Until then, goodbye. This was a personal experience that happened over a year ago, and it's been a mystery to me ever since. Any information explaining what possibly could have happened would be greatly appreciated. This is in NSW, Australia. I was at my aunt's holiday house for the weekend. It was just a regular night. A little bit wet, but everything was normal. So it was around 11:40 p.m., and my dog was sleeping on my bed. Then he quickly got up and started barking his head off to go outside. So I let him. This is unusual behavior for my dog. He runs to the other side of the backyard, which is about 15 meters away from the porch, and then stops barking. He was silent. I turned around for 2 seconds to look at my mom, who had just come out to see what was going on. I turned back around, and my dog was just sitting in front of me on the porch, like nothing happened. I don't know how he ran back so fast without me noticing. Anyway, here's the interesting bit. Me and my mum hear this loud buzzing sound. Not like an electric sparking sound. Nothing natural like we've ever heard before. And a bright lime green light came shining directly down, lighting up the whole backyard perfectly, like a precise laser scan. And it happened twice. Shine and buzzing, pause. Shine and buzzing, stop. There was a roof over the back porch, so I couldn't look up to see where it came from. My instant thought was aliens. The whole thing was so bizarre, like nothing I had ever seen or heard of before. It started as a deep buzz to a higher pitch buzz, and back to a deep buzz, with the green light as the buzzing was happening, and then the whole thing stopped. Then my dog slowly crept inside and went back up onto my bed and was whimpering. The light couldn't have been from a power line because there would have been a shadow casting from the roof of the house. And sparks don't give off green light anyway, especially not as bright and neon as what I saw. Can someone please respond and explain, or tell me if anyone had had any similar experiences to mine? Thank you.
Last week, I had this memory flooding back into my mind. I was a child, under 7 years old. We went to Mexico to visit my dad's side of the family. He grew up in San Luis, like in the middle of nowhere by the mountain. I just remember there only being sand or dirt, no grass, and a bunch of cactus everywhere. Very desert looking. Anyways, when we got there, it was already late, so we went to sleep. We didn't all fit on the same bed, so me and the other kids laid on the coat on the cement floor. Everyone had already fallen asleep, but I was little and unfamiliar with the place, so I was still up and couldn't sleep. I was staring at the bottom of the door, because there was an open space. I could see outside, and it scared me. Then, I started to see a bright, blinding white light, and there was a strong wind, and dirt was going everywhere. The door opens, and the light is so bright I could barely open my eyes. I looked up to see 2 gray aliens with big black eyes standing at the door. I got scared, and I hurried up and put my head back down. I closed my eyes, and I could feel them moving around at the top of my head, but I couldn't feel anything, so it was weird. I just kept my eyes closed, and the light started to fade away, and the wind started to die down, so I opened my eyes again, and the door was closed, and they were gone. As a grown-up, I thought maybe it was just a dream, but it couldn't be, because I remember the next day when I woke up, I kept hearing something rolling around in my head. I kept shaking my head, and I could hear something in there. I even remember telling my mom to put her ear to my head and shaking my head and asking her if she could hear it too. She just said, "No, I can't hear anything, go play." I'm 28 now, and I told my dad, and he believed me, which was crazy to me because he's so serious and strict, but he believed me. He said his dad used to see them out there too all the time, and that they had huge black eyes, and that over there, they used to look like balls or orbs of light, which made me think of the story of the soldiers who shot down the UFO, and 3 gray aliens with big eyes emerged and merged into a spear of light and turned the soldiers into limestone. It just stood out because both were gray aliens with big eyes that could turn into balls of light.
I'm in my bed, covered in sweat, shaking and scared. This is my second experience with them. The first time they watched me, we weren't in the same room, but I can feel them watching me. And I saw their light from the space in the door frame. It was greenish yellow. Time dilation happens when they initiate contact. Also, I don't remember hearing any sound at all during either encounter. This time was horrifying. I woke up and saw faces on my ceiling. They weren't detailed, but they looked human. Their features were outlined by a pink light. They're interdimensional and invisible to my knowledge. I felt 2 of them grab my arms. I struggled physically. I think they were really latching onto my consciousness, but our auras are humanoid shaped, so really they were grabbing the energy in my arms. I could feel their grip and their strength. They are smaller and weaker than us, but they have large hands and long fingers. I could feel them pulling me. Although I got out of bed and struggled physically pulling and jerking my arms out of their grasp in a spasm of defensive flailing against the invisible force, I believe they were trying to separate my consciousness from my body. So in reality, my physical struggle made no difference. After the struggle, it seemed like about a minute, they let go. I am not on drugs, although mentally, physically, spiritually, I am exhausted. I believe they come for us when we are vulnerable. I survived my encounter and was able to share it, but now I wonder, when people die or have heart attacks or strokes or just collapse, were they victims of alien abduction? Are their corpses just hollow vessels left behind by interdimensional soul thieves? I've struggled with the idea of sharing my experience, mostly because I don't know if it actually happened or if it was just a dream. One night in the summer when I was about 10 or 11, I was awake in the middle of the night, and I could hear the horses running around the pasture as if something had happened. I decided to get up and go check on things. At that time, my family had a massive old barn, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. I walked through the door of the barn and found a very large man, as white as snow, climbing into a hayloft. I remember being startled but not scared. He turned around and looked at me, and slowly lowered himself back down. He took a few steps towards before he knelt down, and put out his hand, like one you would do with a stray animal. As I looked at him, I felt like he looked sad and tired, and not at all like he would do me any harm. I decided to take his hand and walk him towards our kids' hangout space, which is just a space in the barn where we had some old couches, a few toys, and a radio. As soon as he saw the radio, he became more animated, ran towards it, and started messing around with it. That went on for a bit, and I kept asking him what he needed the radio for. He never said a word. Not one word. He wouldn't give me a name, so I started calling him Radio. After some time, he sat down the radio and sat down on the couch. I brought over my favorite horse book and started thumbing through the pages, showing him all of my favorite horse breeds. Eventually, he gently took the book from me and closed it, as if to say, "I'm done." I got up to put the book away, and he laid down on the couch. I remember him being so large that his head was on the armrest, while his legs hung over the other armrest, at the knee. He was a giant, pure white, and I don't recall any hair. His eyes were jet black, but they weren't huge or angular. If anything, they slanted downward and were beady. After he fell asleep, I decided to go back to the house and go to bed, but I put a blanket over him before I went in. I woke up in the morning, and the whole experience came back flooding to me. My feet were dirty as if I had been outside during the night. I grabbed some snacks and ran out to the barn. I ran out to our hangout space and found everything as I would have expected it. The blanket was on the floor, the book was sitting on the table, and radio was out of place, but he was gone. It's important to know that I had a habit of sleepwalking at this time in my life. So it's possible that this was all just a dream. At first, I thought he was just a very, very, very strange person, and I hoped he found safety. The memory never left me, and by the time I was a teen, I had decided that I dreamt the whole thing and let it go. Then, Prometheus came out, and I agreed to go see it with friends. When the tall white alien came on screen, I nearly jumped out of my seat. It wasn't an exact likeness, but it was like seeing a ghost. At the time, I knew absolutely nothing about aliens, and the only one I had ever heard of was the classic little green men. Nonetheless, I forced myself to let it go and move on. That memory could just not be real, so I must have dreamt it. As time passed, I started wondering how I could have imagined a being that I had never heard of. Could that have really happened? Could radio be real? Has anyone else had an experience like this?
So, last year I experienced something that was absolutely strange. I just keep coming back to thinking about it, thinking about what this could have been, and I can't get it out of my head. I read the text conversations to my fiancée from that night saved on my phone, and the text as it was happening, describing what I'm hearing and seeing, and it was just so vivid and real. I couldn't believe it. It was about midnight one night, and I was in my room at my parents' house. There are 2 windows in this room, one facing the backyard and one facing the side of the neighbor's house. I will be referencing the one facing the backyard. This night, my blinds were shut and the overhead light in the room was on. For context, so it wasn't dark in the room at all. And all of a sudden, this big blue beam of light comes rushing in through the shut blinds of the window, making a swooshing noise as it comes in. This light was bright blue, and I'm talking LED blue, bright as day even, with the room lights on and the blinds shut. I am terrified, feeling like I can't even move from my bed, and as quick as it whooshes in, it whooshes back out. I hear rustling, almost raking of leaves after the light is left. The world is silent otherwise. I could not explain this as anything human or man-made. This light was not a headlight. It could not have made its way through my shut blinds, over the fence, and up to the 2nd floor of our house. This story does not end here. 2 weeks later, to the day, and at around the same time, the same experience, same bright blue beam, and the same whooshing and raking. I told myself that I would get up and check what it was this time, but I was in shock. I couldn't move. My biggest regret to this day is not looking outside of my window. Please, if anyone has any insight into this experience, I would be grateful. I just want answers, or just something to make me feel a little more sane.
As far as I can remember, I've always been able to see things. One specific encounter stays in my head. I was about 7 or 8 years old. I shared a room with my older sister, and we both slept in a full-size bed my tata gifted us. I slept against the wall because she was older, and said I could fall into the floor if I slept on the other end. We always went to bed around 8:30 p.m. on school nights, and my parents always left our bedroom door open. It must have been during September or October, because it was quite cool. One night, I was awoken by what sounded like footsteps. I felt pressure on the bed as if someone put their knee down on it, because I felt my sister roll down. The only problem is that I wasn't able to open my eyes or turn away from the wall. In my head, I told myself to turn around, and something responded back in my head. Don't look at me. This conversation went on for what seemed like minutes, before I finally was able to gather up the courage to turn around. As I turned to see this being, it was now holding my sister up in its arms, trying to lift her out of bed. I gasped and pushed the little body back up against the wall. This thing laid my sister back down ever so gently and put its long pale finger up to its non-existing mouth and said, "Shh." I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell for my dad to come help us, but nothing would come out of my mouth. I started to cry without any sound, and right as this thing began to lift my sister up again, I let out the most blood-curdling scream. Dad! Dad! There's something in my room! This thing started to angrily look at me and dropped my sister back down. It must have been about 3 to 4 feet in height, and was wearing what I could only remember describing it like the underwater swimsuit that Scooby-Doo wore in one of his episodes. This thing tiptoed out of our room and disappeared up through our ceiling, right before my dad came charging in. I was so terrified. I wasn't able to ever speak about this incident until a couple years ago. My whole life I thought it was a ghost. It was only when my husband suggested it might have been an alien, and that its arms were insect-like. That's why it walked. Funny. If you have any stories that you would like to see narrated here on the channel, please go into the subreddit and submit them there. The link is in the description. Also, we do have a Discord now. Thank you so much to Creepy Clown Girl for putting it together for us. You can come hang out with me and other narrators and get the party started, get spooky with us. That link is also in the description as well. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to introduce the King of Panic. We have a lot of brand new content coming soon with him in it. He is very talented. He does not have his own channel. He just kind of wants to be a part of this. So if you would like to hear from him once you start and you like his voice, stay tuned here. And as always, thank you for visiting the Panic Room. You have successfully made it to the next portion of your tour. Please stay tuned for your next prompt. Click the like button and subscribe to receive notifications for when the next portion of your tour is ready to join. Thank you for watching. Don't let the panic drown you.